What is going on, my game design gurus, and welcome to the Level Design Lobby. Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well, playing and or making the games that you love. You're joining me, your host, Max Pears. And thank you all for joining me on this fine day or evening, depending when you're listening. So this episode is the bonus episode 7 or 8 now, I believe, of the Essential Reading. Essential Reading is where I go through some of the month's best sort of articles, podcasts, videos that I've seen throughout this period and want to recommend to all of you amazing listeners because, again, I may know some stuff. I do not know everyone because this game design community is truly an incredible place. So I think it's important for us to share the information that we have. So let me share my information with all of you, and let's jump into it. Oh, just before we go, all the links to these episodes will be in the description down below, so do check them out and give them the listen or watch. So the first one we've got is Magic the Gathering Drive to Work, episode 511, which is Less is More. So this one is a breakdown from a miniseries that the podcast does, which is called 20 Lessons, which is about a breakdown further into a talk that the presenter did at GDC, breaking down some of his 20 lessons about game design that he's learnt while making Magic the Gathering. And this one is episode 17 of this one, which is Less is More. Now, I know this is Magic the Gathering, this isn't a video game, but it's still a game. There are still correlations we can all learn and put together between it. With this episode, he breaks down how most of us, and we've all been there when we're younger, or even to this day, where we still think, oh, if we add more and more and more, that the game will be better, which is not necessarily the case. He says it's about taking things out that don't actually improve your game. What is the core of your experience? What is the core development that you're trying to do? And is all these mechanics or features, are they actually, melding together to create that experience, or doing their own things that aren't actually adding on to that experience? It's a really good breakdown of this, and I think it's something that we've all been through when we're designing games, about adding stuff. And I think it's always important, and some of his... Sorry guys, I'm getting messaged. I think it's always important for us to take a step back and look what is the overall core pillars or the core of the game, and question, is it really adding upon this? I think we've all been there, and I think it's a really important one. I don't want to give too much away because he uses his examples from his experience and how he's taken away from this. So do check this one out. It's enjoyable. It's only a 30-minute listen, so it's always a good one. And I think it's worth going for. Number 2. Now this one's a bit of a curveball when I'm saying this one, because you may not think where I'm going with this. But I think this is important because this is the Level Design Lobby, and I'm really popular today, it seems. This is, as I said, as being a level design podcast primarily, and as a level designer, architecture is super important to my work and to us as level designers. I think it's important that we have a basic understanding and a curiosity of architecture all the time, because this is how we make believable spaces. For number 2, I'm recommending Netflix original series, yes, Netflix, The World's Most Extraordinary Homes. I don't know if this is like a British thing, because the hosts are British. We have a show similar called Grand Designs in England, and it's about breaking down architecture. I'm sure it's not just, but let's say the hosts are British. But it's where these two people, an architect and a property developer, go around looking at some of the most extraordinary houses and some of the most extraordinary environments. I think what's really cool as a level designer to check this out is, although we work primarily, I guess it depends on what you're making, but a lot of level design takes place in a city normally at some point, especially with open worlds games now growing in these big metropolis-like cities. It shows these kind of more extravagant and for lack of a better word, strange houses as well. Because when you look at some of them, especially from the exterior, it isn't as traditional as you think. There was one house, for example, that was based on origami, and because it's in the mountains in New Zealand, the way that the architects tried to focus on this, and the shape of it was more on triangles, because in the background of it is mountains, so using these sort of rigid edges to blend in with the environment, which is so fascinating, because we can take from this and apply it to our work, seeing how architects look at the lay of the land. And where most level designers start is with a box or a rectangle, and as you get better at level design, you realize that actually most places are not as boxy as people would like to believe. So I think taking a look at this is a really important point for us, because it's very different as well. And going back to the one that was based on origami and triangles, is on the interior, because it's made primarily out of wood. They really focus on the shapes being very jagged to create sort of like as if you're passing through a cave. Not as rigid, but still how you see how the wood meets each other when connecting. It's a very interesting thing, and it's worth everyone taking a look at to see how these are actual real spaces and what you can get away with more. Because one of the things that we struggle with, I guess the word's not struggle, but the meeting point we sometimes have when working with art, for environment art, for example, is sometimes it's this lack of realism. When they say, it's not realistic. But my counterpoint always to that is that's okay. Everything we make has to be realistic. It has to be believable. So when you see some of these crazy and out there houses, it's brilliant, because I feel like after watching this, there's things that I've taken away with the connectivity between certain rooms and how they've done it in certain houses, and also some of the shapes that we can push from this. So really, I recommend checking it out. If you are in England or have a VPN, go to Channel 4 and look for a series called Grand Designs. It's a similar type of show, and again, really getting an understanding of this architecture and this more extravagant architecture, I think opens your mind to more, I guess, extravagant designs for your levels. Now we have number 3. This is a shameless plug, I'm not even going to lie to any of you. This is my article on Gamasutra, Introducing Mechanics. So I wrote this probably, it was just after Christmas gone last year, about as I was playing Persona 5, Xenoblade Chronicles, and Mario Odyssey. And they all have something in common, all these games. Every game does. It's mechanics. There's other things as well, but one of the big things is mechanics. And it's how they introduce these mechanics to the players themselves. Because normally, there are obviously odd cases as well where you get all the mechanics at once, but normally it's slow drip to the player, so they have a new mechanic, and then it's how they introduce it. And there's some flaws in some of the big games, some of the small games, someone's like 15th project to someone's first project. There's always different sort of ways that people do it. And I talk about some of the 5 most common mistakes when introducing mechanics, and some of the suggestions I have to fix some of these and encourage how to introduce mechanics maybe at a better rate. It was a one I enjoyed writing. I think it's got some valid points if you are making your own game. So it's worth going to check out. I'll put a link to that down below. Now, before we move on to the 4th and 5th recommendation, I want to talk about our sponsor at the Level Design and Lobby, which is Gamerborn. Gamerborn is a gaming clothing site which sponsors the show, which helps me. Now, they have some incredible gaming gear for you, whether you're a man or a woman, and also for children as well. They have some amazing stuff out there, and also mugs as well, 1-player and 2-player, and just some great stuff for gamers and for gamer apparel. I recommend checking them out. Now you can use the coupon code Level Design Lobby. That's all one word with a capital L, a capital D, and another capital L, which will get you 10% off anything that you buy there. Again, all that information will be down below. Check out Gamerborn for some really cool gaming gear. Now we're going to move on to the fourth recommendation of this episode, which is on Gamasutra designing. It's a great move by me. Sorry for stumbling. It's designing for coziness. Now I have not made. I made one game targeted at children, but it wasn't necessarily the coziness element I was looking at. So this to me was a really interesting breakdown on how games such as Yoshi's Woolen World and Stardew Valley, how they appeal to players on a different level, a different subconscious wave, and how they create that cozy environment. Now, they do go into many different things, from the art style to the psychology of it and to the mechanics itself. The mechanic list, I felt that was kind of rushed a little bit. I wish they'd just spent a bit more time on it. I think it's a great starting point, but I think it's a great starting point, and I think we can get some great intent there from it, and it'd be an interesting one to see what people think about it moving forward. The highlight of this for me, though, was they mentioned the coziness of a work environment. I thought that was a really interesting one. Like I said, I've not made really any cozy games, so it would be interesting to see that if you are working on a cozy game, does the environment of your sort of coziness and happiness, does that help your design creativity for those type of games, or does it not? Or how do we improve the life of our developers to help create a better game, for example? I thought that was a very interesting point that they brought up when writing about this. And yeah, I thought it was really interesting. Go check it out. I think there is some stuff still to be developed, but it is a great starting and talking point for us. And go check it out, guys, for sure. Now for the fifth and final recommendation. We have a talk from GDC 2017, called Looking at Open World Games to Understand Player Autonomy. This to me was a really, really good talk. And it wasn't done by any dev or anything. It was actually done by a research group. Now, some of you may be aware of some of these. I believe it's called Immersive. Oh man, sorry. But they're a research group, and the talk is given by Scott Rigby, and it's talking. Sorry, I've gone off topic. Research groups. Research groups are some. There's more of these growing up, which is the psychologists who work on video games, who take in this game data. A lot of big AAA companies, when we worked at Ubisoft, we did this. I believe Activision, EA, and a few others actually do this, where these companies will take in information from the players that have played it. If you remember Assassin's Creed 4, there was actually a system every time you completed a mission, then you could give feedback on it. And they take that information, as well as there's some technology out there. I don't think it was on these games, for example, but just as an example here, that like track players' eye movement. And so people who are developing websites, they track where the eyes spend most of the time at. So that's how they use color theory and also the layout to address these sort of feedbacks. In the same video games, they measure how much percentage of the players complete the actual storyline compared to how many hours are put into the open world itself. And it's really interesting, them just these groups and businesses, just as a side note, on how they're becoming a more integral part of the game design. So as I was saying, the man Scott Rigby gives one of the representatives, Scott Rigby, gives a breakdown on open world games and talking about the autonomy that players are looking for. Now, players express freedom, but he talks about how freedom can actually be measured in video games, and how certain ones, such as Grand Theft Auto, Mass Effect — I know Mass Effect's not open world, but it's a sandbox — and Witcher, and how all these games appeal to gamers and what we can learn from these ones, and how we can hopefully engage better with our open world games. Some of these lessons can be taken to linear games as well, but it's a really interesting one about the psychology of a player and how we as game designers influence and try appeal to this side of the player. I thought it was one of the most interesting ones I've been through in a while, so I strongly recommend that. Now there we have it, my game design gurus. That is 5 recommendations for you on what you should check out. The ones that I've enjoyed of this month as well. So a link to them will be in the description down below. Now if you want to reach out to me and discuss certain sort of recommendations that you have for me, then please do so. Tweet me at MaxPairs or email in to the Level Design Lobby, leveldesignlobby@gmail.com, and we can talk about there. I've been getting a lot more interactivity on Twitter, which is great because I'm happy to talk to as many of you as I possibly can, because you're all amazing, and it's because of all of you that the show is still going and growing. So if you have any recommendations, please do speak to me about them. If you are listening to me via the power of iTunes or any podcasting app, please do leave a, if possible, 5-star review for it, so it helps grow this brand here, and then it reaches more people so that we as a community can keep growing. And for anyone who's listening to me on YouTube or SoundCloud, please click the subscribe button so you stay up to date with when I keep posting. I like to do 3 a month is the current rate that I'm going at. So thank you all very, very much. I hope you are having a good time and having a great day, and that this smooth jazz is caressing your ears. I haven't said smooth jazz in a while, and I feel it's been lacking. So take it all easy, everyone, and I'll catch you all next time.